first question is, what's your main motivation for seeking a seat on the LCSD1 Board of Trustees?
I'm a parent of two school-aged kids, and I'm also an active substitute teacher within the district. So it gives me a parent perspective, and it also gives me a little bit of an insight perspective, because while I don't get to sub in every school building all the time in the district, I have been in several of them over the past few years. And I will say that having my kids in buildings and seeing other kids in buildings, I have seen a huge shift in the culture in the buildings within our schools, and also the behavior of the kids in them. And there's a lot of things I think we could work on in the district, but before I think we can effectively do that, we have to address the most important things, which are, if a kid doesn't want to go to school because they are actively being bullied or targeted, or another plethora of social reasons as they get older, it's going to be really hard for that child to do well on tests. We hear a lot about graduation ready, getting them to graduation, and test scores. But before we get there, there's a foundation that we need to make stronger, and I think that starts with behavior.
Very good, thanks.
If you're elected, how would you make sure that you're considering the needs of all constituents?
I would make sure that parents and students felt like they could talk to me and I would listen. I might not always agree with what they have to say, but I would always have a listening ear and not just make them feel that they could come to me as a trustee and talk to me, but make them know that, that I would be open for conversations, and there really is no dumb questions, and there really is nothing that I feel like would be too small. I think a lot of times, especially students, feel like they aren't heard or they can't speak to adults closest to them, let alone a board member. I think that's a big step for a student, but I would also like to empower students to take their own responsibility in their education, and that includes being involved with their school board because they make the decisions along with them.
What do you think the relationship between the board and parents should look like?
I think that the relationship should be a fluid one, and I also feel like it should be, again, trusting with a level of respect. I would never want a parent or a community member to feel like I just said that they couldn't reach out to not only me if I were a board member, but any board member, because that's part of our position, is to help them make their voices heard along, because they are stakeholders as well as their student. So for me, that would just look like giving them opportunities, probably more opportunity, I would say, to interact with board members than maybe they feel like they currently have. Phone numbers are shared and everybody has an email, and sometimes that's not the communication that works best for everyone. But I do also feel that a board meeting should have public comment and the public should be there to attend. But we're the largest school district in the state, and if we didn't have some sort of decorum or the ways that we do things, we could have a board meeting that went until 2 a.m. And so I feel like a level of transparency, but getting back to a mutual respect would be helpful for both the board and parents that maybe feel like they haven't been heard.
You just dovetailed right into our next question and just
Oh.
answered part of question 4. So that's fantastic, which is, what should the rules of engagement be at school board meetings? We've obviously seen some increased animosity, some situations that have gotten a little out of control, or maybe a lot out of control.
Yeah.
And there have been rules that have been put in place. Are you fine with the rules as they are? Would you make some changes?
I feel there has to be some rules of order because, as I said, it needs to have respect on both ends. A meeting has to have a process, and that includes the public, but the public also needs to know what that process is, and they also have to respect it. In my opinion, a school district meeting is a local governing board. Public should attend. It really kind of has the same parameters for me as, let's say, a legislative committee meeting. They have decorum. These are the expectations, and I still think that the board needs to have that. Because, like I said, we could go on and on if we keep, having so many people speak at the meeting, and it's not that I don't want to hear what the public has to say, and it is their right and my right to say those things, but the meeting has to run in a certain way. So I don't think that I would change that specifically. Maybe I would add something different or a different time where the public and the board could come together and we could all hear each other in maybe not a super casual way, because there would still need to be some sort of parameters, but maybe not so, rules and things as a board meeting would be. Because it doesn't matter how loud you start talking, I can still hear you. And I think that goes for a lot of people. We may not understand what each other is saying, but your volume or my volume increasing, that's not probably going to make me understand what you have to say any better. So
things like 3-minute time limits, registering in advance to comment, those kind of things you think are appropriate?
I wish that and maybe there could, if I dove into it, be some gray area, but I don't think that there could be. It's hard to register before, I feel like, because maybe you're like, I could never speak in public. I would never do that. But maybe you attend, and then inside you're like, I have to say this right now, because if I don't, I'll never say it, and it's important to me. But there still has to be some sort of a process. And I participated in a forum last night where we only had 60 seconds most of the time to respond. And I will tell you, just talking, it's done. And 3 minutes when you have something to say, also, it is done so quickly. But again, I think we still have to have a process that everybody knows and everybody can respect.
Do you think K-12 schools in Wyoming are adequately funded? And if not, how would you recommend the legislature address the issue?
I don't. Adequately funded is a very, everybody can interpret that differently, but I feel the way that our legislature gives everybody the money is a very complicated process at best. Most people don't understand it because it's lengthy, and it actually goes through so many channels before it even gets to an actual district for them to distribute those funds. I feel like some schools probably have a lot more money than other schools do. I wish that every school district would distribute their monies in a more effective and efficient way locally to their buildings and to their students. I don't know if myself would be able to change how we get money to the school districts through the legislature, but I feel like I myself, if on the board, could change how at least Laramie 1 uses those dollars and where they spend them the best.
So I'm just follow up just really quickly. Do you think the amount that the state is providing as a whole to K-12 districts is enough? Or do you agree with the Wyoming Education Association that recently sued the state saying it's not adequate?
I guess if I'm just going to do that, I would say, considering every school district in the state, then no, I would say no, it's not adequate.
Okay. And then as a follow-up, do you think LCSD 1 should join that lawsuit?
That's a good question. I think that Well, I think if we want to try to effectively change the way the legislature distributes money and how much they are, that could be an effective way for Laramie One to do so, because it extends their resources and gives them a little more power, I suppose, if they were to join in with other districts to say, hey, we are not happy with the way that we are funded, and this is why, and here's how we feel. I think it gives them, or our district, probably more backing and probably confidence and power to do that.
Good. Thank you.
As a board member, what would be your budget priorities for the district?
So my budget priorities would be, we have so many facilities, buildings that our students physically are in across our district. And in our district, we also have some of the oldest buildings within the state. And speaking of funding, the way we get funding in general to school districts, complicated. And then we have this crazy process where the way we get money to update buildings and what we can do with that money is also very complicated, involving a list, and if I slap a coat of paint on the inside, that's considered an improvement, and that could mess up that building's spot to get actual structural improvements in the future, and then they move down. That would be one of my priorities, because we're already a growing district, and we continue to see growth. We're continually told we don't have the money to build new school buildings. So for the foreseeable future, we're still going to have students in these same buildings. And I feel like we could figure out more clever ways to spend those dollars if we're being told, no, you can't do it that way. And I'm not trying to be disingenuous or dishonest, but if they're saying this isn't an existing thing, like you don't have air conditioning already, it's not existing, so you can't use this giant chunk of money to put in air conditioning because you don't already have it. Well, what I'm saying is maybe we could figure out how we can actually use this chunk of money to do that. So that would probably be one of my top priorities, is making the facilities we have the best or better than they are for staff and students to be in daily.
How do you feel about increasing teacher compensation? If you agree that salaries need to be increased, how would you find the funds to make that happen?
I think that we pay our teachers, and rightfully so, very well within District 1. And I do feel if they have, been in the district, they do a good job, they earned it, then yes, they should be compensated for it. But I also feel like not only teachers need to see an increase in pay. We focus a lot on the teachers, and we should. Their teachers are great. I also am a teacher. But we have so many other district employees that have a very heavy lift with students every day that are not teachers, and they actually do spend a lot of time with students. Paraprofessionals spend a lot of time helping kids and one-on-one, and I think not only teachers, I would like to see an increase for support staff as well, because they are very helpful and important on the day-to-day for every school building in our district. I think that I could probably look at other areas where we spend a lot of money, like where we took away elementary sports, and then we hired a district-wide athletic director on the secondary level, and gave that person quite a bit of dollars. But also I know we still have some athletic directors within the buildings. So I think those kinds of things we could look at and say, why did we do this, for starters? And then secondly, why did we do this for so much money? And then how could we do this better for the people that have already been here helping us every day?
How much freedom should teachers have with regard to teaching the district's curriculum?
I like this question, not that I haven't liked all of them, but I like this question because myself being in the classroom frequently as well, and also observing teachers, I feel like gives me a little bit of a different perspective. And I feel like a teacher doesn't become a teacher because you want to get famous in a small town or because you're going to be a millionaire. A teacher becomes a teacher because they like hanging around kids and they like to teach them. And I do want teachers to feel empowered to use their own talents and the why of why they became a teacher, to be able to teach kids their content area. That would also be an anchoring factor, I feel like, for kids wanting to come to school, wanting to pay attention in that classroom, and wanting to stick with it, and then in turn paying attention and absorbing what they're being taught.
How do you feel about the teaching of racial discrimination as a part of U.S. history?
I think history is important. All of the history is important for us to know about. I don't know, I think it's important to know about, but I also think it's important to not dwell on, I suppose. I can't think of what I'm trying to articulate there. I don't think that in any content area, one part of it should be focused on, and that's the only part of a content area that somebody learns about. Because then it becomes, I'm not actually teaching you everything that happened, or everything that I know about, or we know about this content area in an unbiased way. And I feel like that is what is important as a teacher. I should teach you the content and I should give you the material, but not tell you what you take from it, or tell you that what I am telling you is the right and only opinion and or way.
I'm going to follow up with that by asking you about the controversy over critical race theory. Have you followed that, or what are your thoughts about that, and your thought about it being part of K-12 districts?
For me, from the very beginning, when this kind of started to emerge as a hot button topic, I thought to myself, I personally didn't even hear the term critical race theory and or CRT until I was a college student, taking college level classes. And so that was interesting to me because I thought, wait a minute, what? I didn't realize that was, and also it is it's complex, and I don't think if you got to the bones of it that a kindergartner would be like, yes, I know exactly what you're trying to tell me, and I know I can say critical race theory, and I know, what that is. I don't, that's not real life. With a kindergartner and even up through elementary school. We are all different all over the world, and we need to not be afraid of that, and we need to not teach our kids to be afraid of that. We look different, and we probably have different opinions and morals and the things we probably are teaching our own children. But that doesn't mean that we can't or that we shouldn't coexist. So I don't think teaching kids about different races or having a book that shows a Caucasian kid and a Spanish descent kid, I don't think that should not be in our school, because we all go to school with different kids every day. And it's very confusing, in my opinion, especially for lower grade kids, just because developmentally their brain isn't ready to think that complex, in my opinion, for those issues. It's hard for them to understand, I feel, why they may go to school with a kid who is their best friend that looks different than them, and they might not have even actually registered that until somebody came in and questioned and said, yeah, that kid looks different than you. That kid lives over here, and their family believes this, and so that should be a problem with you. Kids don't naturally think that way, and I don't feel like we as a society should either, or we should push that on them in a classroom.
Thank you.
Do you support an opt-in or opt-out policy for kids checking out books from school libraries?
I support the way the policy has been, opt-out. It's my responsibility as a parent myself to engage with my kids about their education and the things that they see and read, and also have a level of expectation between us and the things that we support and believe in our morals. I know that unfortunately that's not the way that it is for everyone, but parents and students have to take more responsibility a little bit in their education of their kids, and that includes knowing what your kid is checking out or what they aren't checking out in the library. I feel like district librarians would love it if parents called them like they do a classroom teacher or a principal and had a conversation with them about the books that they want their kids to be checking out or they don't want to be checking out.
Right, got the final scripted question. What should the process be for changing policies in the school district? Do you agree or disagree with the current process, and why?
Going back to what I was talking about before, I do think that we all have to be involved, even if you are my retired neighbor next door and you don't have any children or even grandchildren within this district. You still are also a stakeholder. You're a taxpayer, and hopefully you are vested as that retired neighbor, because someday Laramie 1 students are going to grow up and live and work in our community, and we want them to do that. So I feel like it needs to be the public, community, stakeholders, and the board. I think they should take input when they decide, hey, this policy might not be working and we need to change because things evolve. And the public needs to know about that because we're a public school district. I have heard in the past, like, I didn't even know this was happening. This curriculum was up for change and I had no idea. I've heard that from community members before, and I'm not really quite sure how I would change it. I know that they will publish it in the paper. I know that those things are available for us to go look at for free in the library and also in the admin building. So I think it maybe takes a little more communication and just letting everybody know, again, these are your options, but you, also meaning me, has to participate if you really want to be involved, if you really want to know what the change is going to be, and if you want to have some input in it.
So again, we have reached the end of the scripted questions, but I wanted to ask you if there were issues that we did not address that you would like to address with us.
Not so much. I do strongly feel that the school board race should remain nonpartisan everywhere, not just in our district. You don't get paid to be on the school board, and especially in the state of Wyoming, if you are a school board member in any school district, you make a huge amount of decisions on behalf of the kids in your community, and you do that voluntarily. And I just feel like the second it becomes partied, it invites a whole mess of other issues that I feel like needs to stay out. I think a local governing board can and should be able to, now more than ever, show their community that they can work together, and it doesn't have to be party lines. And I'm not naive enough to think that they will not overlap from time to time, and those like huge issues that have come in to a school district won't do that. I'm not naive enough to think in that way. But a school board is working for the kids and the community, not for a party or like their next stepping stone if they're trying to get into a different office. That's just my opinion.
Anything else? Any other pressing issues or topics that we didn't cover?
I don't think so. Those were great questions. I honestly am still a little like whoa from being in a forum last night.
Sure.
So when after
Which was a partisan forum, I understand. So.
Yeah, it was. But I didn't want to not.
Participate.
Yeah, I didn't want to not participate because it's also important for me to like walk the walk, and I think it's important for everybody to participate in their civic duty. So.
Anything else about your background or your qualifications for office that you didn't get to share that you'd like to share with us?
I am an educational consultant on my own, and I have helped a couple of families within our district within the last year go into their child's IEP meetings, and if they're on a 504 plan, and advocate for them, the student, and their family in those meetings with the district. So, yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Very cool. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
being here. We really appreciate it. I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
stop the